Princess Artemis held a lump of dirt in her hand and explained that this was food. She noticed that Pluto did not eat and asked why. Hercules turned to Her Majesty and said that he would rather eat it, to which the little girl categorically answered no, and explained that now she was in the role of a mommy, not a princess. Besides, Pluto was acting as a father. She handed that lump of dirt to her daddy, telling him to hurry up. Pluto had already opened his mouth. Hercules, Endymion, and Mythos flinched at that. They didn't realize whether they were imagining it or not. Pluto pretended to eat what his daughter gave him. He thanked Artemis for the food. Everyone started laughing. If Hercules laughed out loud, he would be killed, so he had to hold back. The little girl noted that he didn't even take a bite because he was still lying next to him. Endymion put his hand on Pluto's shoulder and asked, "What an ignorant idiot, after all. Shouldn't he eat what Her Highness offered, even if it was just a lump of dirt?" He asked her to give it to him, for he would eat it all for her instead of this ignorant idiot. Artemis replied that next time she would make one especially for him. She can't mess with this guy if he actually eats it. He shouldn't be disappointed because he couldn't eat a lump of dirt. Myth popped the lump that was lying next to him into his mouth. Chewing a bit, he informed her that they were all just people unable to live up to Her Highness's expectations. Myth gave that 50 points, and then added that the soil in their Asteria empire needed better care. Andy was furious and kept saying that he was a mean snake and it wasn't fair because Myth was ruining their lineage. Hercules only thought that this was what was expected of Mr. Myth. They didn't understand. Didn't dragons have stomach problems? Endymion also grabbed a lump and explained that since it was already like this, he would eat it too. Artemis asked him not to, because it was dirty. Pluto asked if they were trying to feed him dirt or what. Oh no, she wanted to mess with him, and then pretend to be innocent. She had trained them pretty hard all these days. But Pluto is a real demon on the battlefield. One wrong move and she could be killed. The little girl will never slip him one of those again. She sharply asked her father to look over there, for it was such a pretty flower. They noticed that Her Highness was very good at changing topics. After a couple of minutes, the little girl went up to her father and put the flower behind his ear. It was a gift for Daddy. Pluto informed her that she was the queen's daughter, and he hoped she could handle the title. Gotcha. He acts Suvro, but his gaze softens. Her real name is Yongjahi, and she is 28 years old. She woke up and found herself in the body of a princess after dying from overexertion. Myth continued to eat. Hercules warned that he would get stomach problems if he kept eating it. Myth asked how he managed. On top of that, she was reborn as a princess with 4 ruthless fathers. A week ago, Jean Jahi reported that she was a genius, because after all the sleepless nights for a whole week, she had finally completed the theory of supersymmetric rebirth. But that's how she died at the age of 28. And that was the end of her life in her room. She was a genius. In her past life, she was a researcher studying the theory of supersymmetric rebirth. Young Jahi created that. In her past life, she was a huge fan of fantasy novels, so she started a research to prove that fantasy worlds really exist. The result was the supersymmetric rebirth theory. It was that after death, people continue to be reborn in other dimensions. It's hard to believe, but somewhere there really could be other worlds with living dragons and magic. According to her theory, typical fantasy worlds are created by our hidden memories of past lives. Let the adventure begin. Her colleagues supported her wholeheartedly. It looked like they looked at her with understanding, or it was just her imagination, and after 8 long years of hard research, she finally found proof that other dimensions exist. A brief summary of her life. Jean Jahi can't deny, she finally felt like her life was getting better. Plus, she's been lonely for as long as she can remember herself. Therefore, she would love to be surrounded by handsome men in her next life. When she woke up, she was reborn as a princess, and what's more, a princess who, according to the novella, is supposed to die at the age of 12. She would have liked to live a long life. She should have asked for something else instead of attractive men, eyes the color of the night sky that sparkle like diamonds, clear, fair skin like a porcelain doll, and soft, fluffy silver hair like the wool of the sheep in the short story Diary of a Princess. She fits the description of Princess Artemis, aka Princess Luna. The little girl happily howled that just to think she had been reborn as a novella princess destined to live a short life. She proved the theory of supersymmetric rebirth, but abruptly despaired after the realization. Suddenly, the voice of a servant girl was heard asking if she could come in, but as soon as she saw the state the princess was in, she immediately turned to her. Luna was far from unflawed, as the maid had said before. She asked Her Highness what had happened, for she had been looking forward to her 7th birthday. The little girl realized that this was the same situation after which Princess Luna first appeared. She had definitely been reborn in the Princess Diary world. Babe couldn't understand why she couldn't be reborn in a story with a harem and a happy ending instead. This is not the time to get all uppity. In the original story, it all started after the princess got it at her 7th birthday banquet, and then passed away at the age of 12 during the invasion of Britain. As expected from the creator of the supersymmetric rebirth theory, and because she didn't even think it's a dream and she needs to wake up. But somehow she was reborn by the world of the novel she was reading. The maid said that everything was ready and added that she looked at herself in the mirror. The little girl was very pretty. Once she put on the dress, she would outshine even Queen Athena. She looked at herself in the mirror and could not realize if it was real. The maid said that the princess must be enchanted by her own reflection. After all, she is still a child. There was a knock, and they thought a maid had arrived to bring the dress. It was the Imperial Knight, Pluto Leo Cleon, requesting an audience. Dirty brown hair that seemed to encapsulate all the darkness of the night sky, skin as white as unnaturally light ceramics, and gray-blue eyes that reflected nothing. Suddenly Artemis remembered the description from the story. Like a cold ice crystal, Pluto stained his beautiful hands with blood. He is the ultimate assassin, a loyal servant of the queen and a demon on the battlefield. The maid saw the little girl's condition and asked what had happened to her so suddenly. Pluto reported that her escort to Gidona's residence would arrive in 2 hours, but Chancellor Eugene ordered him to come and check on things. The maid reported that she would help the princess get ready until then. The little girl began to tremble, for regardless of their background, he would mercilessly kill anyone, for he is the darkness of the empire, and he might as well be Princess Artemis's father. The talking maids also fell silent, as expected of the darkness of the empire, instills fear in one and all. One maid said that now that she had met Sir Pluto in person, she could die without regrets, to which the other explained that he is indeed the most attractive man in the kingdom, no, in the whole world. But now she can't cross paths with him, for this handsome prince is a demon on the battlefield. She was asked to be quiet, as he is trained in aura manipulation, so he can hear everything within a 2 kilometers radius. Luna didn't realize if he was an elephant or what. The maid asked the princess what was wrong. That's the problem. Pluto, one of the main characters, finally showed up as expected, exactly as in the original story. 2 hours before the birthday banquet. She had so many questions, but it was better to put them aside for later. Zhang Jiahe was used to accepting unacceptable situations. Right now, she only had one thing to think about: how to escape before being killed, according to the original story. Princess Artemis reported that she was thinking about how grateful she was to Ira and Vita for making her look so cute. The maids thought it was so cute, and she has an angelic heart. Babe asked how about them joining in too. She suggested that they celebrate her birthday together. Ira replied that only royalty and aristocrats could come to the banquet. She and Vita are countesses and baronesses, but according to tradition, maids are forbidden to attend. Luna explained that she was so eager to celebrate with Ira and Vita. Princess Artemis then suggested that they dress up and celebrate her birthday themselves. Ira replied that it would be an honor, and then asked if the princess's clothes weren't too small for them. Vita hugged the baby girl before realizing it. Luna informed her that they could try on her mother's dresses. After all, Queen Athena was in heaven, so no one wore them anyway. She thought her pronunciation was terrible because she was a child. Ira asked if they dare wear the queen's clothes. The little girl explained that they could secretly try on the dresses and then quickly take them off. Exactly, they won't fall into her trap so easily. She must immediately use it to escape. At the age of almost 30, She really wouldn't want to do something like this. She started crying with words about how they couldn't do such a thing. Ira immediately agreed. Vita reported that Ira must not spoil the princess. If anyone says a word, Luna will throw them out as rebels. The maids are enjoying themselves immensely. Vita recognized that oppressive, cruel side, just like Queen Athena's. The princess didn't realize if that was an insult or a compliment. After a while, the little girl asked if they were done or not, to which the reply followed that they were almost done, an hour and a half to go. They came out. Vita reported that having inherited the dresses from the queen, they always thought they were beautiful every time they saw them in Her Highness's room. The little girl reported that they were both so beautiful. They were so happy they thought they would faint. And so they did. Luna asked them not to think badly of her, for as a precaution, these clothes cannot be worn by people other than those with royal blood flowing in them, or they will faint. She's sorry, but she has to say goodbye to this place before she gets killed like in the original story. She found the tape, ran over to the box. Opening it, she was glad, for there were 2 items for the invisible escape, just like in the original story. The 2 items were ordinary and had no special abilities, but after she tied the ribbon on the brooch like this, it would glow brightly in the moonlight. It was a success. Lady Puterm's ribbon turns a child into an adult, changes only women, and Fantas's brooch blocks people's perception, makes the one who wears it invisible. They're a secret weapon that Princess Luna often uses when she escapes from the palace. It even has a coded algorithm as its seal, so you can only use them when the seal is broken in a certain way. The princess is glad that she remembers in detail the story of the novel. She tied this ribbon around her hair. Even though she became an orphan because of that incident, she couldn't remember anything because of the shock. However, she doesn't forget what she saw once. Remarkable memory. She disguised herself as a maid. Becoming her is the perfect disguise. She borrowed Vita's clothes. In the midst of it all, she packed a lot of money in her suitcase. It's impossible to get rid of the spirit of poverty, even if you are reborn. A moment and she froze. The girl spotted Pluto on the street. Blood and a man saying Pluto, the king's dog, had already lost his master. Athena was dead. In any case, Asteria would be destroyed by them, by Britain, to which Pluto noted that that man's mouth was still capable of yapping. In the original story, Princess Luna heard the news of the assassination of Britannia's spy. She didn't know that the one who did it was Pluto. She trembled as she knew that if he found out she was trying to escape, he would kill her too. Pluto heard the sounds and asked who was there, and then added that everyone knew it was pointless to hide their presence in front of him, so it was better to come out if one didn't want to die. A girl appeared in front of him. Pluto asked who she was, for he had never seen a maid like her before. The girl bowed and explained that her name was Henia. She would enter the palace as a court lady and greeted him. According to the original novel, there was a time when a large number of new maids recruited by Chancellor Eugene entered the palace. That's why she deliberately disguised herself as a maid. Pluto can find out the truth. He thinks she's suspicious. Pluto reported that she has strange timing. He gave her permission to go. But lastly, he asked her to open her suitcase. The girl replied that it was just humble servant's underwear, so she was afraid it might smell bad. To which Pluto informed her that he didn't like to be told twice. She had to do it. She thought that if he found out what was in her suitcase, he would just die. But if she didn't show, he would suspect her and kill her. She twisted her fate only to have everything turn out to be in vain, hastening her death before she would have even turned 12. When that suitcase is fully opened, she will. But suddenly they were interrupted by a knight who addressed Pluto. He said that the Chancellor was looking for him because it had to do with the princess's birthday celebration, so the commander was asked to come right away. The girl thought she was still alive, but as soon as she heard that, he would check it out first and then go right away. The knight reported that it was too much. How many maids he made cry. Dozens of maids wanted to leave because of the commander. Pluto has a suspicious disorder. Only after a couple minutes, that knight noticed the dead body and was shocked. Pluto said that he was a spy for Britain and asked him to take care of it. There's nothing to be surprised about. It's the same thing every time. Pluto turned to Hainia and said that they would meet again later. Except that she was already gone. At this time, the knight was dragging the body with words about being afraid of corpses, and didn't understand why he always did it. Pluto had sensed her presence when he killed the spy. If you think about it that way, this maid was able to speak casually even after witnessing such a scene. He decided that she was suspicious. Hainia ran and thought that no matter how greedy she was, taking a suitcase with her was a mistake. But if the woman wanted to survive on her own, she should have at least that much money. A melody stopped her. She moved closer to the door and saw the guy there. She couldn't believe it. That guy was beckoning her to come closer to him. She did. Now Hainia can understand it. It was the same aura gate she had read about in the novels. Up close, that guy looked even more incredible. He asked her what her name was, his hair, like the light of the moon, shining brightest in the dim lighting. Violet eyes glittered like the most beautiful amethysts. Blushing, his cheeks slightly resemble peaches, and his skin is as light as porcelain. He looks like a fairy, Endymion Bellium Hibelius. He's an important character in the original story, and the second. She greeted him. He asked her if she wanted him to dance for her. He asked her if she wasn't purposely sneaking a peek to see something. The girl replied that she was not peeking. Endymion then asked what she was doing there then. She was just wondering what he looked like since he was the main character of the novella. Hainia informed that there was one, the Artemis dance. What she saw turned out to be reality. The scene that she had longed to see in the novella, the dance that Princess Artemis saw at her birthday party and cried without even realizing. It was a very touching scene, even if she happened to read it. She really wanted to see him, if only in her dreams. In one deft move, he removed the magical band from her hair. She became little Artemis again. Endymion reported that it was the same magical item from the rumors. He had heard about it from the princess before, but it was still amazing to see it with his own eyes. The little girl was terrified. She didn't understand how so. Endymion informed her that the Artemis dance was between him and the princess. He kissed her hand. He greeted the little moon of the empire, Princess Diana Artemis, Stella Asteria. The little girl realized that aside from Princess Luna, no one else knew about the Artemis dance. Besides, the princess didn't realize when she was the one talking about magic items. She thought she was a fool. Andy turned to the princess. She didn't understand when it was royalty who was related to a prostitute. But suddenly Pluto walked into the room. He thought the polite maid was suspicious, so he followed her. He couldn't believe his eyes. The little girl was trying to calm down, moreover. She is a princess, after all. She just ran away to keep herself alive. There's no way that one was going to kill her. But as soon as she saw his sword, she began to think differently. The princess thought she had the worst life. She was already preparing for the worst, but she didn't understand why she wasn't in pain. The little girl opened her eyes and saw that Pluto was with a sword near Andy. Pluto asked how such a filthy rat dared to urinate on the back of the princess's palm. Andy informed him that if kissing the back of the princess's palm to such a low-born man like him was an insult, he would pay with his life. The little girl couldn't believe it because Pluto could really do that. She tried to think of something. One moment and the princess was crying as her brain refused to cooperate. She cried and said she was scared. She thought she was already a dead man as he would cut off 2 heads at once. Suddenly a voice was heard. It was Amur Temis Minimasini, who reported that she was nowhere to be found, so he went to look for her. Pink hair and one eye. This is the face. Cupid added that he was so surprised when he heard her voice. Pluto turned to him and asked why he was there instead of guarding Gasonia. She realized that this was her chance. The princess threw herself around his neck. He asked her what was wrong, to which the little girl replied that Pluto was scary to her. Pluto asked again why the rascal was there, to which Cupid replied that the patrol had ended earlier than expected. Pluto then ordered him to let it go and get lost since he was done with business. Cupid asked what he wanted him to do and wondered if he meant the princess or what. Pluto explained that he didn't like to repeat himself twice and asked who else he could mean. The princess didn't understand if she was an inanimate object or what. Judging by his behavior now, he must be very angry about her trying to escape. She's a princess, and he's only a knight commander. So why is he so rude to her then? Even if his position is lower, the knight commander actually comes right after the emperor, because of the fact that Asteria was an empire built on conquest, and he's a loyal dog that would eat even dirt at the first word of the despotic queen Athena. Athena was an emperor, so she also became a king when she ascended the throne. However, she was usually referred to as queen. Andy turned to Pluto and asked if Chancellor Eugene hadn't been looking for him recently. Shouldn't he go faster? Since Sir Cupid had returned, Mr. Pluto was no longer needed there. Cupid added that he was the princess's knight escort, and then asked if there was any good reason why he should take her away, to which Pluto replied that of course there is. But in fact, there is no reason at all. The moon asked him to take the suitcase. Cupid explained that if he didn't have any good reasons, he should probably bow out. The little girl informed him that she liked Cupid. Endymion couldn't understand the murderous look. Pluto, the strongest knight who had never lost before. Could this be his first defeat? Andy likes that he gave him a blow, but for some reason he didn't feel satisfied. He felt like he was missing something. Pluto muttered that even after she saw the murder scene, that maid was acting normal. However, it turned out to be Princess Artemis. He thought that perhaps she is the strongest demon surpassing even him. Besides, she is the daughter of an oppressive queen. Maybe her fearlessness has similarities to him, a demon on the battlefield. Anything is possible. He receives a question regarding his gloomy appearance. He is asked if he thinks Princess Luna might be his daughter. The second character confirms his thoughts that he thinks Princess Luna is his own daughter. He explains that this is obvious to him. He reflects on his affiliation with Her Majesty's four despite his appearance. He expresses his thoughts while holding his sword and being near another character who also belongs to this group. He looked at him arrogantly, saying that he was too proud for a common misdemeanor. He grinned and asked if he didn't think the princess would be angry if she knew he was treating her like his daughter. He stood across from her and thought about her words. He continued that his reaction was expected since his words were true. He, exclaiming, stated that it was not true. They walked through the forest, and she noticed that the path did not lead to her chambers. Cupid said he wanted to take her to a better place. She, crying, begged him to let her go. He threatened her with death if she did not keep quiet. At this point, looking at her angrily, he asked if she thought he would not know she was a scoundrel. He was surprised how she knew that he had an eye that was injured in more ways than one. She explained that she realized it right away because his opposite eye was injured. She noticed that he often carried the princess in his arms out of habit, but it was still suspicious that he continued to hold her when he could have let go long ago. He thanked her, explaining that the reason he had allowed himself to be kidnapped was to escape, using this moment as bait. Now that Princess Luna had been kidnapped by a British spy, he could escape, and no one would know. She asked him what he meant by no one would know. He said that she didn't need to know that, and warned her that he was having a flashback. She replied that everything was fine except her pronunciation. She showed a magic brooch that could change appearances and explained that it was a tricky item used by the former Revolutionary Army. The brooch was equipped with a distraction function that could be used on the enemy if the owner of the brooch was caught. She reflected that she had no intention of killing him, but she had frightened him enough for him to start obeying her. In response, she was told that she was crazy and asked how she had even come to such a thing. He asked her if she was really a genius, perplexed as to why she hadn't mentioned that the princess here was a genius. He was bothered by her unpredictable behavior and her ability to surprise. He felt uncomfortable around someone who could change the rules of the game so easily. She added that what bothered her even more was how quickly she was able to adapt to this new world. There was a certain amount of pride in her words about her abilities. She felt like she was able to find her place in this world because of her adaptation skills. She remembered her past when she was a defenseless orphan. Her life had been harsh, and the only rule she had was that if you didn't adapt quickly, you wouldn't survive. These memories were a reminder to her of how far she had come because of her ability to adapt. She reflected on the fact that her adaptation skill was finally paying off. Determination sparkled in her eyes. She readied the spell, knowing that the brooch would explode right next to his face. It was her last resort to protect herself. The explosion was going to blow the brooch to pieces along with him if he didn't retreat. She was called out, calling her Princess Luna. It was unexpected, and she turned around to see who exactly was addressing her by that name. A mixture of surprise and concern flashed across Luna's face, for not everyone knew her by that title. He was running towards her, and his name was Endymion. She stopped him abruptly, shouting at him not to come any closer. Luna threatened that if he made a move, she would kill her. There was determination in her voice, though inside she felt fear and tension. He laughed, finding the situation amusing. He found it interesting that she couldn't even move because of this feisty little wench. He felt hatred for the fact that Luna was a genius superior to him. Before she realized what was happening, he had already managed to pull out his dagger. His movements were quick and decisive. He asked which order to give first with a grim grin on his face. He then added that he liked exhausted men, and suggested starting by kneeling. His words were full of malice and superiority. He knelt down himself, showing his contempt and desire to humiliate her. He continued to laugh, calling what was happening a performance, and asked if he didn't have an ounce of dignity. She was frightened. He compared himself to the princess, saying that he was just a human with no value. If he could protect her by kneeling or sacrificing his life, he would gladly do so. It was said that his name was Endymion Bellum Hublux, and he was the second father to Princess Luna. She pondered Lady Paterme's ribbon, which was originally a toy for the children of aristocrats, but had the opposite function of Fantas's brooch. He found what was going on interesting, and said he really wanted to mess around when he saw such submissive people. She thought that if she used the bomb and shield at the same time, the spy would die, and she would be hit too. She wanted to be presumed dead, then no one would know. She noticed that at this distance Endymion would be hurt as well. She reminded herself to pull herself together and that he was just a character from the novella in question. The situation was different from last time, so if she didn't use the bomb now, he said to use it to gouge her eyes out. She noted that after all, she had already been paid for that job. Another character, laughing, said that if he showed her something interesting, he might give her the feisty princess. She felt a gentle touch and was surprised. She called him by his name, Pluto, when he appeared. Pluto remarked that it was silly, since he knew from the beginning that the one wanted to take the princess hostage. So he pretended to attack the other man, knowing that he was working in concert with someone he didn't like. She remembered the words from the novella about the beautiful, bloody, and ruthless demon on the battlefield. She didn't want to believe it, but Pluto wasn't called a demon for nothing. She pondered on how they worked together and how it could improve their relationship. Then she noticed the wound on his arm and asked if he was hurt. He explained that it was a wound from being grabbed by a villain. She was surprised that he reacted that way to a small cut. He reminded himself that even if someone was trying to hurt him, he couldn't let it happen. She exclaimed that she was from 21st century Korea. Pluto, holding her down, told her to repent for what she had done in the afterlife, ignoring her protests. At the end, she called him Daddy. He ordered the prisoner to be taken to jail, adding that he would decide his fate later. His words sounded firm and decisive, as if he already knew what decision he would make. She wondering if Steele had really handled him on the battlefield, or if it was some kind of trickery. These thoughts kept her in suspense. She pondered the fact that she wanted to protect the princess as well, though she realized it wouldn't be easy. Inwardly, she felt a great responsibility and a desire to be of service. He, holding her, wondered what was really going on around him. It seemed to him that there was more behind it all than just surface events. He remembered the moment of the restrained expression on his face and thought that perhaps there had been some misunderstanding. It seemed to him that something important was slipping from his grasp, and it kept him uneasy. She spotted a four-leaf clover, which was quite unusual. She ran after it, calling the princess loudly, and pondered that even in this world, 4-leaf clovers grew like in her past life. Her thoughts were filled with wonder and nostalgia, for such little things reminded her that despite all the changes, there are some things that remain the same. She remembered the distant past when she was told that a 4-leaf clover symbolized good luck. A clover becomes a 4-leaf clover after being trampled, but it continues to grow despite the scars. Luck comes when you overcome pain. She wondered who had said those words but couldn't remember. The only thing she knew, luck comes from pain and suffering. This became a truth for her that kept her moving forward. Her life in Korea, where she lived as a lonely orphan, was horrible. She died when her life began to get better. She believed that her theory of symmetrical rebirth would have worked after death, but fate was cruel. She died at the age of 12 before she could realize her hopes. She held a 4-leaf clover in her hand and wondered if she would lose it, as she had lost so much in her life. The clover was a symbol of hope for her. She called out to Pluto, saying that she had experienced a lot of pain. Her voice sounded tired, but there was determination in it to keep fighting. She touched his face and thought that when she could control her destiny, things would be different. She offered him a gift. She was determined to survive this time and use whatever means necessary to do so. She wasn't going to give up and was willing to go all the way to the end to achieve her goal. He pondered on the fact that even if using a character from the novel in question, that character was her father. He thought it was foolish and said that if she hadn't sent that night away, this wouldn't have happened. He figured he shouldn't have messed with her weak face in the first place to begin with. He asked if she had ever heard of the Hiss tribe. She remembered that they were a small group of people who had inherited spirit blood, which allowed them to strengthen their muscles and use them as weapons. It was a rare and unique skill. She noticed that the spirit blood possessors had violet eyes. She noted that it was an unnatural eye color, and remembered how her daughter had gotten a scratch on her arm earlier, which caused her concern. She told Pluto she could go on her own, but he didn't calm down. She tried to relax, thinking that if things went on as per the original plot, there would be no more shocks. He remembered hearing an interesting report about a magical ribbon that could help the Empire. She had reported that she had insisted on increased security, but her request had been denied due to excessive pressure from a member of the imperial family. He explained that if the Chancellor refused to find the 2 missing magical items at the birthday party, they would be found and destroyed. She said she would then report to the Chancellor. She apologized, saying she didn't want to cancel the birthday party. He said that's not the look on the face of someone who is truly sorry and offered to make sure. He insisted it was fine and apologized, adding that there was no evidence for her claim. But there was actually a catch. Pluto had always been willing to defend her no matter what. Her mom, who was now in heaven, had told her that Luna had no father, and that knights were the strongest and bravest in the world. She assured Luna that Pluto would be able to protect her at any time. Pluto himself, however, thought this was nonsense. He thought it was ineffective, and anyway, his main task was to confront the demons on the battlefield. For now, he decided to postpone his request to the Chancellor, because this day was special, the anniversary of the birth of the Empire's little moon. Everything had to be carefully prepared and thought out. She had gotten it right. The little girl noticed that Pluto was acting as if he had never talked about canceling her birthday party. The servants rushed towards Princess Luna, shouting loudly after her. Their voices sounded anxious, and their faces were worried. The servants were shocked, and could not understand why the knight was with the princess. They greeted him, calling him the Knight of the Empire, Pluto Leo Cleon. The servants' gazes were full of bewilderment and respect. The princess had left unexpectedly, after all, and the servants were greatly worried for her safety. They could not understand why she wore a nightgown until Luna told them that she had stolen her clothes. The master explained that Princess Artemis had used magical transformation items to change her appearance. Babe was worried, because if the servants found out that she had been kidnapped, they would feel guilty for failing to protect her. Baby told her master not to tell the truth, for she would not forgive him for that. She looked at him with pleading in her eyes, realizing that the consequences of telling the truth could be devastating for everyone. Her words were full of despair and fear of what could happen if the secret was revealed. The Lord told the servants to be careful, and furthermore, not to allow the little girl to leave the palace from now on. His voice sounded strict and insistent, for the safety of the little girl was his priority. He knew that the risk was too great, and he ordered the security measures to be strengthened to prevent any dangerous situations in the future. The little girl knew it was because the servants had decided to try on the queen's clothes. What if she said it was her fault? Then there would be 3 guilty people. Her thoughts were racing through her head, and she realized that admitting the truth would only make things worse. Her guilt tormented her, but she was afraid that even more punishment would befall everyone if she confessed. The little girl began to scream and cry about Pluto being scary. Her tears ran down her cheeks and her voice shook with terror. She tried to explain that Pluto had scared her to death, and now she was afraid of him. Her screams echoed throughout the palace, attracting the attention of everyone nearby. The servants began to look at the little girl sweetly and realized that she was a cutie. Her every movement and gesture seemed adorable to them, making them smile and want to take care of her even more. But the little girl herself knew that the person this was supposed to work on probably wouldn't even pay attention. She realized that his heart remained cold and indifferent to her charm. The Lord was in a panic and knew that this kidnapping of a royal family member was a common occurrence. Since they didn't have a clear picture of what was happening, the only thing left was to act quickly and decisively, hoping for luck. The maid ran towards these people and shouted to Pluto. She had an important message that could change the course of events, and she was in a hurry to deliver it as soon as possible. If you are interested in learning more about the sequel or have specific topics or questions you would like me to cover, please leave your comments below. Your active interactions such as likes, comments, and subscriptions to my channel will be an important signal to me that my work is appreciated and I can move on.